All right, quick disclaimer. We actually built this to go on an iPad, so I'm not figuring out how to use this computer. So this is the way it's going to look. So you can cheat and actually see the next slide right off the bat.
Well, here's what you might want to do is that. Wait a minute. Oh, I see. Is it? Oh, good. There you go. Now you can. That's and you see what's coming next.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing what. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, everybody. My name is James Askew, also known as the Crazy Vet. I'm here to prove to you that we exotics can not only be cute but portly and sexy. So bear with me. I'm going to prove this in the next hour or so.
So if we want to know something, we just ask you?
Well, seeing as how... Sorry. I didn't get the pun right off the bat, and that's the first time in my entire career I haven't gotten that one. All right, I got to thinking about the things that worry us the most. Seeing COVID start, open border. And some of the weird things that we veterinarians kind of take for granted in my area. If you ask for a fecal, if nothing on a float, there's nothing wrong with the creature. I do a lot of directs. I think a lot of my patients are 5, 6, 7 grams. A lot get even heavier than that. At that point in time, I just tell myself, how can I get the most diagnostics out of the smallest sample possible? So I do a lot of direct fecal microscopies, and these are some of the cool cases that we've noticed just recently. Here we go. This is a juvenile. Where are we at? All right, slide 2. There we go. All right, juvenile common marmoset presented for a health exam, and we had a lot of good time with here. All right.
What is that? Instead of doing identification, you can actually see some protozoa cruising around in there. I saw several trichomonas, and I think I saw one discomonas, so maybe it was just the backwards trichomonas. But anyway, it's a protozoa, it's got to go, and it's probably not going to make this guy live a healthier or the normal life. So that is just awesome. There's that much face, that much emotion, that much love in the face that is that big. That is just the most awesome thing. Oh yeah, maybe I'll make it under $5. Yeah.
You do charge per bite, right? We do not have the remote, wherever it is.
Yes, I can't hear it at all. I can't hear it.
It's a terrible. Oh yeah, that's and instead of the contact magnification, you can actually see some protozoa cruising around in there. I saw several trichomonas.
Okay.
Thought we did. No, we didn't. I tried. There you go. There you go. Thanks, Doc.
He's got with the COVID stuff, just on the scared side.
Yeah.
All right, it is Tuesday afternoon. We're at Animal Care Hospital, Long Beach. This cutie then for a wellness exam. 56 grams down around. Yeah, there's something about cameras and phones. They just got it there. Yeah, wait. Is that a card, Dr. Andrew?
It's where we do the shameless plug.
Is that what you want as a card? Here, can I hold the card for you? Keep up the good work. Work it, baby.
Good trick, Doc. Keep this one in mind.
Taking notes.
That's what everybody thinks.
All right, wet mount fecal exam. We actually did some other things. We just found out that every fecal float that had been done by the referring veterinarian ended up being negative, but this animal ended up having chronic diarrhea. So they brought it to me, and I tried for a wet mount, and this is basically what we found.
All right, in the next room is
That's volume.
a small marmoset. And I'm trying to show you, there you go, right there about the 6 o'clock position, you can see a small little circle dancing around, just went off 5 o'clock. So we definitely have some protozoa. It just went on the screen, there'll be another one you're going to play my head here in a second. Where'd you go? This one over here. Just get one center screen. How long can we wait? Oh, and there it comes, swimming right away. There it is. Oh, look at it swimming. Oh, he's gonna get better than that. And that looks like a histomonas. There's another one.
Morphologically under the microscope, when you're watching these guys, it turns out the trichomonas kind of propel themselves through the feces. The histomonas likes to grab and pull things. So
What is it, Jeff? What is it?
it's a protozoal parasite of the intestine.
What the hell does that mean?
Less complicated than a vertebrate and more complicated than a bacteria.
Could it be both?
No, it's a poop bug.
All right, so I'm gonna have monkey poop. Let's go show mom.
This one here is from a 6-month-old spider monkey brought in, chronic diarrhea. The other vet, the referring vet, had not found any problems doing fecal floats and other issues. It just wasn't getting any better. So I decided to go ahead and do my classic phase contrast microscopy in a direct wet mount. And these are the humongous things we found processing.
All right, it is Tuesday morning, and we're in Animal Care Hospital, Long Beach. We have a 6-month-old spider monkey behind me here. I just finished showing the clients a slide, and give you an idea how many there are. This is 100 times magnification. And these are probably the largest parasites or protozoa I've ever seen inside of a mammal stool. That is just crazy. Right now
I've asked a few people and no one really got an answer for me.
Country, and sadly, these are not the kind of parasites that you would find in a captive-bred animal. So for every one of these spider monkeys and the primates that I'm seeing that are making it into the country illegally, it's not just humans being smuggled across the border. This trafficking of animals is not just humans. So whenever you guys start looking at these cases or thinking about the border, having it open is not helping anybody out. Anyway, so there's that. We'll see if I can go to a higher magnification here. Going to 400. Oh wait.
I talk to myself a lot.
That's 40. There's one background, I think. Look at the size of these protozoa. It's actually kind of beautiful. You see the cilia making them roll around? It really is kind of cool. For protozoologists. Anybody out there who knows what this is, please let me know.
So do the antibiotics just
In the meantime,
Yes, these were actually pretty easy to treat.
Wow. And I might also want to say this is the reason that you don't depend on floats when it comes to parasite control in any animal, because there's a lot of things you will not see with a concentration technique or a centrifugation technique. All those things, you can miss this completely. This monkey was actually seen by a veterinarian very recently. They did a flotation test, said this monkey was certified, parasite-free, and this is a complete fail on somebody's part. All right, that's what it looks like. That is cool. All right, it is. All right, in the room behind me.
You stop. All right. This is another 1-year-old spider monkey presented for diarrhea, facial swelling, and it was previously treated with activated charcoal. You will actually notice that this is what it looks like under the microscope. This is the sample that we did, so we're going to play that right now.
It's basically about
worked.
an 8-year-old spider monkey. And if I can just get that right picture here, we'll be able to see that vibrator running on our screen. There's just went over here at about the 7:30, 8 o'clock position. You see him dancing around over there. Oops. Guess I bounced off the microscope. Yep.
What you're watching for is in the background. You'll actually see tiny little spicules that are like dancing and going different directions. I can't really see it too well on this one, but anticribriosis is a big issue.
Significant?
Yes, sir.
This is 1,000 times magnification. That is pretty cool. See one center screen dancing around too. There's quite a few of them. Oh, that's a good spot. There you go. That's the level. Oh, and that dark section in the back with the big rock with it, that is carbon, because we gave our monkey some charcoal yesterday, and they've had some toxic effects going on. Very smart idea. I should do a slide with the Vibrio. If you got the crap anyway.
I mean, you have a good conversation with yourself laughing.
Yeah, it gets boring at work
That's
sometimes.
actually pretty active. Okay. So let's see how she responds to the corticosteroid in just a second, and then we'll, that's cool. They're everywhere. No, I mean, that's something we can treat. Okay, all right. Bob.
Here with juvenile male spider monkey presented with diarrhea, weight loss. Again, float was negative for the parasites. Did a wet mount again, and these are the things that we found.
Do not be upset when big stuff starts coming out of this monkey's booty.
We'll wait till afterwards. All right. I'm working with new media here.
This is the good tasting stuff. I couldn't give you the chalk. Hello. Give me a chance. There you go. Okay, we got some. We'll take that for your drug use later on.
Since Daddy does testosterone shots, he has plenty.
I didn't hear that. Beautiful. Except for that cocaine mustache.
Yeah.
So much better. Okay. That is a large strong jowl. If you're looking at about the 1 to 2 o'clock position, you can actually see the head of it moving pretty slowly. It's still alive. I'm not seeing any of the parasites in the stool, but I'm going to go for some low altitude and check the bacterium foam count here as well. Anyway, this is in a small, very immature spider monkey. He's extremely thin, so maybe just forgot why we're thin. Oh, that's awesome. That's kind of cool. You don't see those every day.
It looks like a snake, a baby snake. What is it?
That's a large strong jaw.
Come on, there you go. All right, that's enough of the videos.
If those monkeys would stay in the wild, if they, they're coming in illegally, would they survive those kind of this kind of parasites? Are they okay living in the natural environment with those parasites, or would they also?
Years ago, I saw a National Geographic article, and basically it was telling us that for every known species on this planet, there are 2 dedicated parasitic species that are going to be on it, okay, or in it. So with that in mind, even parasites have parasites. Heartworms have bacterial parasites that work with them. Every parasite, or even, my point is that monkey being born, if only geographically or regionally, will actually have some of those parasites. You looking at these samples that we've seen coming across the border, you can tell that they're taking them from a wide range, because we're just not seeing the normal stuff. We're not seeing hookworms and roundworms. We're seeing strongyles, these protozoa. If they go down to a stream edge and start drinking something, those protozoa could have come from some reptile or amphibian that was in the same water source.
They were exposed to,
Yes.
not from the natural what they would eat. in the wild where they come from.
When in the wild where they come from, the mom is going to be giving them, statistically speaking, at least 2 dedicated parasites to those babies. Okay, so every one of us is born pretty much with parasites. All right. Anyway, let's go to the next part of this topic. Having gotten those things out of the way, thank God. I was getting tired of hearing my own self speak there, especially since my lips weren't moving. My other half is nodding, yeah. Anyway, as a veterinarian, we see a lot of really strange creatures. We see a lot of strange bacterial diseases, fungal diseases, and there is a new technology out there where they're actually not even trying to grow the organisms. Okay, according to the AVMA, we're only able to culture with those culture sensitivities that your own doctors and we will send out 3% of all the microbes that we know of. Okay, every time we send out these cultures, it turns out that 30% of the cultures that we may send out for skin lesions and other lesions like that come back no growth. Okay, it turns out that about 67% of those urine cultures that are sent out, even by your own doctors, end up coming back as no growth. We know the organisms are there. We can see them in a microscope. We can see bloody urine. It's going to have its weird, obvious smells, but at the same time, we just don't have the technology to diagnose a lot of these things. There's a myriad of reasons. If this thing will just advance like it's supposed to. All right. Culture sensitive results might actually fail, from fastidious organisms, things that are hard to grow. There are some organisms that just like to live in the white blood cells of their host. Other organisms will only live alongside of a fungus. And if you're trying to grow these organisms, it's kind of like growing an orchid. You may get the soil formulation right, but chances are not. The other antibiotic use, let's just say they come to me and I'm the second or third vet that's seen them. They actually have come for a chronic issue and they're on a round of antibiotics. I try to culture that organism and get it, and because they're on an antibiotic that's threatened its life, I might not get that positive growth sample. So again, more negative growths. Anaerobic versus aerobic. These are things when you actually culture these organisms, one of the big 2 main things that they'll tell you is, are you putting this in as an anaerobic organism or an aerobic organism? Does it like oxygen? Does it hate oxygen? Okay. If you don't put it in the right medium, another reason for no growth. Improper collection techniques. You're trying to get an anaerobic sample, and in the process of getting it from its sample collection site to the tube itself and sending it off, it's been exposed to enough oxygen to kill it. There's one of the myriad ways that this doesn't work. Inadequate transport conditions. The second we catch that sample, it's likely alive, but the second it makes it into the mail, be it FedEx, UPS, or the mail service, it may spend too much time in the back of a hot truck, and those things are going to cause these organisms to die. That way the lab technicians at the other end will not be able to grow it on the auger, tell you what it is. Again, negative growth. Incorrect sample medium, we pretty much went through that. Viral samples. If you have an organism that is probably caused by a virus and you're sending it into a bacterial culture sample, it's likely not going to grow anything. Again, more negative results. Fungal samples, the same with viral. If they don't put it on the right medium, it's not going to make it. Not enough sample size. We kind of covered that pretty much earlier. Is it normal or not? Sometimes they'll send you back a culture and they'll tell you that they're seeing this organism in good numbers, but you know perfectly well that it's a normal organism. This is supposed to be in the dog. Why would it be causing, or the monkey, this is why it's causing a problem. And again, back to the male and how long it's in there and the heat and the sample. Did it survive the trip to get there? All right. It turns out that I inadvertently met some of the people at my dog. They approached me and said, "You do weird stuff. Would you mind us using, giving you some samples and you trying it?" At that point in time, I wasn't sure. I held on to my sample packet for about 2 months before I decided, wait a minute, I've got this cool new system we can try. So anyway, My Dog Diagnostics is a new company out there. The reason that they have done so well is the fact that they're not trying to grow the organisms. They're actually studying the actual DNA of what's there. So in all of those other bad situations, it dies in transit, it's on the wrong media, it is a virus, it is a fungus. They can actually take that DNA that has been mapped and identify that organism, and from the last 100 samples that they've seen of the same organism, they can actually tell you which antibiotics, which antivirals or antifungals they will respond to. I thought this was actually kind of interesting. It turns out that my dog is genetically mapped just under 100,000 species, of organisms. Of those organisms, 64,000 of those are different species of bacteria. 41,000 of those are different species of fungi, 640 species of protozoans and parasites they've actually mapped, and they have 27,000 viruses that they've mapped. Now, they're not reporting on those viruses yet, but I'm told that by the end of this year, they'll be able to send off a virus. How many times have you heard a monkey was sick? You think it's going to be a virus, but no one can tell you. I mean, there have not been any studies to show, what the common primate or even what the dogs and cats can get. So they'll be able to map and tell you the number of viruses that are out there and what's in there and causing a problem. So I see myself sending off a lot less, viral cultures and things like that. This is just a genius company. They've gone above and beyond to get some answers that we weren't sure they were going to get. Turn. All right. In this room, there is a 10-year-old female sanguineous mitis, red-armed tamarin, presented with a history of intermittent diarrhea, stomatitis, gagging, and general moodiness. This is actually my own monkey. All right. Was the first patient we send off some stuff on. Fecal floats were always negative. I think once we actually did see a parasite that she'd gotten from eating some of her worms. Fecal wet mount exhibited several fungal organisms, intestinal bacteria. You can actually see a stain right there from an oral swab in that upper right-hand corner. Radiographs exhibited GI gas, some arthritis. During sedation for one of our radiographs, we actually had swabbed the mouth, which is where that sample came from in the upper right. You can actually see a fungal organism, but I cannot tell you what kind it is. By not knowing what kind it was, you would just put her on antifungals for a while till she got better. And then when she got better and was clinically fine, you would stop the antibiotics and the antifungals. Anyway, knowing that I have another half who spends more time worrying about the monkey than she does myself, all this stuff, that got to the point where,
That's the way it should be.
no, anyway. Because of, sex and sleep deprivation, I decided it was time to do another test. So we actually used the My Dog sample and swabbed it. Which I thought was pretty interesting. We had to sedate her from my first microscope swab, but for the oral swab and the My Dog test, which is very, very small, we just basically held her still, stuck it to the back of her throat, and we ended up getting our test results back. Anyway, it took me more than a month to get those results back simply because I did not know that they were sending it to my email. So although they normally have a 2 to 3 day turnaround once they get the test, it took me a while to get those answers. Anyway, so they detected 5 species of bacteria, 5 species of fungus, with cell counts and sample percentages of all 10 species. If you'll notice the right side of the screen, this is how one of their sample tests will come in. They will identify the bacteria, identify the fungal species. At the bottom, you'll notice the little graphs there. These are the difference in graph between the bacteria versus fungi, the different types of fungal species in a graph form, and the different kinds of bacterial species in a graph form. What I really thought was interesting, and this is why that particular monkey ended up getting chronic infections, was the fact that we were dealing with a sporulated type of fungi. Most sporulated type of fungi tend to rear their ugly heads over and over again depending on where these spore end up. We can kill the active organism. Okay, so think of your bread mold type of fungi. It's got roots that are in the bread in the tree. It's got stalks. Those stalks are basically the spores. That's what we see on bread mold. These same type of organisms morphologically can actually live inside of our pets. So she kept having this same organism over and over again, and we weren't sure what it was until My Dog had presented this. She did have an Aspergillus species and had that sample that I just previously showed you been a little bit more detailed, or I had more of the organism, I probably could have figured this out, but it was even easier that they sent this stuff to us. Since then, except for the fact that she's now on pulse therapy for antifungals, she's actually doing pretty good. We started on a different type of antifungal very recently. I try not to talk about drugs during these talks because it's not a vet meeting. Well, it's not usually a vet meeting. We got one representative here. Anyway, because of that particular species of fungus, we now know, and the My Dog test, that we have to do some pulse therapy until this thing is gone. Good to say she's doing pretty well at the time. Come on, next slide.
Which is the bacteria on fungus that you were concerned about?
The Aspergillus?
Aspergillus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me see. They talk in here. They even reference the antibacterials. used to treat the infections, and even reported on associated genes. I mean, they've done so much research into some of these bacterial species that they've actually been able to map the gene that makes them resistant toward one drug or the other. So they can tell you without going through the complete culture and sensitivity that that this organism has a propensity to be resistant to certain drugs. So that's even in the genome and part of the things that they can actually present to you as well. Again, the right side is some more of the tests as they break these things down. Always been impressed by how this works.
What kind of cost is involved in getting this done?
I want to say be expecting to spend about $200.
To me, that's cheap for a good diagnosis.
That's not bad. Actually, culture and sensitivities used to be a $60 test. Now they're up to $150 to $200. This is actually that culture and sensitivity that should not fail. So I'm a big fan of these guys now. I even brought some samples with me just in case you guys want to take something back to your vet. You can actually give them the heads up. It takes a good vet to know they're there. Good vet.
Does this work on livestock as well?
Yes. It works on humans. That's another one of these weird cases I'm going to show up. Since this is a primate thing, I thought I would talk about primates in general. And since we're a room full of all species, I have one of my technicians ended up getting an issue. But we're getting there. Getting ahead of myself here. Here's the next slide again. You can actually see my cytology samples. And they'll actually, what's cool about my dog is you actually get a veterinary consult. You pay for that test. You can call and talk to a veterinarian. They will tell you what they're seeing in the test, how they would respond to it, that type of thing. So I'm very impressed with them. So far, they've never failed me. And this has been, they've saved bird cases. They've done some things that the average veterinarian, the average cultural sensitivity could not have done. So I really believe this company is doing pretty good. Where are we at on this one? All right. One of the things, I don't know why that's there. It turns out I had a technician. We somehow have skipped a slide. I have a technician. One of my technicians ended up coming in. They had a lesion on their shoulder. She'd gone to a few dermatologists. They'd done several cultures and sensitivities. At least 8. All of them turned up being negative. She was slated to have some surgery and some other things done. She'd seen an infectious disease specialist. They really could not see what was going on or could not culture it or get an idea on the organism. Since my dog asked me to break the rules and bring them samples they never had before, I thought I would test them and send in a human sample. So we'll see if we can come back to this one in a minute. Anyway, here's pictures of her shoulder when I first noticed it. We have a middle-aged, tubal-ligated Homo sapien. I'm glad you're here to appreciate that signal, man. With a chronic full-thickness left shoulder skin lesion and injury, seen by several dermatologists, infectious disease physician, and a plastic surgeon. Over 8 negative cultures, several infectious disease consults. She was scheduled for surgical removal before she asked me to look at it. Anyway, I swabbed the lesion. It was very painful. It was obviously infectious. Anyway, during the diff quick cytology, it's a common stain that most of us use. I actually saw some fungal elements and very few bacteria, so I was convinced it was a fungus. Okay, I told her, go ahead and get her on some treatment, and the doctors there just basically said, veterinarian said, what? So at that point in time, the case went on. I advised her to start some antifungals, cancel the plastic surgery. Nobody wants to cut into an infected wound. They cultured it again. Again, it came back negative. She was on a short regimen of antifungals and went into surgery. It looked like it improved for a day or two, and then basically it just ended up coming back. These are some post-op pics of after the surgery. And of course, we got my dog involved. They were really reluctant to take a human sample, but they did it anyway. I'm thinking they're going to expand sometime in the very near future.
Real quick, you diagnosed it as sporothrix, and they did surgery to remove the sporothrix. It still requires surgery?
No. They didn't know it was sporothrix. And somehow that slide is supposed to be before this slide. All right, anyway, so I guess when it transferred over, it screwed things up. So anyway, with that in mind, I diagnosed it as sporothrix. I sent them the data. And they were truly impressed by what we found, but unfortunately the damage was already done, and I have no
But she'd already
idea.
had surgery.
Yes, she'd already had surgery.
I see.
I got the sample before surgery, okay, and then I didn't get it back for a month later. By then, she'd already had a week's worth of antibiotics, antifungals, and by the time I got my sample back, I was able to tell them what it was they were trying to cut out, the looks on their faces, and I got pictures. She shared pictures of those doctors' faces by knowing what they'd missed all this time. So anyway,
So
this
for us that are not doctors, what exactly does that mean, what she has?
Sporothrix shankai is also known as rose handler's disease. Okay, back in the day, if you were somebody working in the garden, these organisms are in the soil everywhere. Okay, if you have something that's limiting your immune response, or it just gets deep enough in your tissue, it's going to grow. Back to these sporulating type
Is it
of.
like a poison ivy or a poison oak tree, or
No, it's a fungal disease.
It's an
Yeah.
actual fungus.
fungus?
It's a plant fungus that can take up residence on occasion into a human. This would be a classic house or monsters inside you.
Yes.
That would be.
Again, back to the sporulated type of fungi, like our aspergillosis, aspergillosis case over there. This is one of those cases because it is sporulated. She's likely going to be on antifungals on and off for the rest of her life. We did a concert last week together. Went to a concert. Anyway, my point is she is, still has those lesions there, a big scar, but they're no longer active, and she's no longer weeping the organisms into the environment. It's really funny. That whole clinic has 15 women that work there, and she's the only one that ended up with this infection. Okay, and there's, like I said, this is what this organism is Sporothrix shankai. I don't remember hearing that when I was in vet school. It's just one of those ones they'd miss completely. Once you get to identify it, again, it wouldn't grow 9 times in the culture sensitivity labs, but I took that one tiny swab and stuck it inside that lesion. I actually went beneath a piece of healing skin and then sent that off, and they had the answer in no time. What infectious disease provinces, the house case. This is one of those things that they had brought in an infectious disease person, and that infectious disease person just could not figure it out. Tried. So the technology, as much as I'd like to say we are perfect and technology is great, we aren't perfect, and technology is getting better all the time. And if we learn to use these technologies, we will be more perfect for you. But for the most part, this is just one of those cases where we needed that extra push or help to make the diagnosis. And my dog is ahead of it. Again, what I think is awesome is they're going to have 100,000 more samples of viruses to choose from. I mean, how many times have one of these guys been sick and you go to the doctor and say, is it a virus? They can't tell you. I can't see it under the microscope. They're too small for microscope work, and I love my microscope. But now they'll be able to do that swab, send it off, and within a week get back any of the viruses that are on there. During the COVID-19 thing, I could have gotten rich just the amount of times I would have seen, hey, does my dog have COVID? Does my cat have COVID? Well, you spend a little bit of money and we'll get that answer for you, Mrs. Jones. It'll be there for you. And this thing's trying to die. Anyway, let's go back. Anyway, we're at the point where if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. This is was supposed to take a little bit longer, but there's some slides missing. Questions? Anybody? What you got? They're checking for the DNA. Okay. In other words, when we sampled her, okay, I showed you the pictures of the organism. We knew there was a fungus. Okay. We treated her for a fungus, but what we didn't know was it's one of these special funguses. Think of it as the herpes virus of fungi. Okay, the gift that keeps on giving. It's going, because of the spores, it sets aside when we're trying to kill the roots of it, that spore is going to come alive later on and become that disease again. Okay, so that's why we saw it. We just didn't know what species it was. Now that we know what species it is, we know how it forms and how chronic it can be. Okay, next.
On the 6-month spider monkey in the beginning, I've known you for a few years. I know you're a smart man. Maybe you're a brilliant man.
I get lucky.
Why would the vet previously take it a step further to do what you did?
Lazy. You know, even talking about the lack of somebody fixing that ear last night, you know, within 20 minutes of them walking into the hospital. Laziness.
So the
Try to find a
knowledge is there,
reason
the
to not
knowledge is
look.
there, he had it, just didn't choose
Oh, yeah.
to use it.
In theory, that veterinarian had that sample in his hand. I'm hoping it was a gloved hand, but that sample was there, and he did a fecal flotation. It's a concentration technique. It changes the pH of the fluid. It changes the specific gravity of the fluid. If you were a bacteria or a protozoa or something of that matter that doesn't float to the surface, they're not going to notice it. There are other concentration techniques that sometimes that large strongyle might not have made its way through the mesh onto the slide. So I'm just a fan of trying to see how good this animal is naturally. Take that sample, look at it under the microscope, just one drop of water, you know, and you know, mixing it all around. I love to call it making poop soup. And then once you start looking at it, you get a good idea on the cocci versus rod sample, bacterial counts in there. There's a disease in human medicine as well as veterinary medicine called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Sometimes some dog, cat's in the backyard, they eat something dead, monkey gets in the garbage can, you know, whatever was in there had an overgrowth of bacteria. If we can see it, diagnose it, we could probably give them an antibiotic that might help, or, you know, some beneficial bacteria that may help even out those numbers. But if you don't look at that sample alive, okay, or without the, you know, the concentration techniques, you'll never notice it.
Basically, he was going by numbers, and you're actually physically seeing the difference.
Well, yeah, and a lot of us veterinarians, we hand a poop sample to a technician, and they run to the back, and they're trained just to look for. I think every veterinary hospital right next to the microscope has a small plate about this size, and it has the pictures of the most common parasites that are out there: your hookworms, your roundworms, your whipworms, things like that, malaria. You know, and in doing so, that's what they're looking for. Okay.
One of the biggest investments, not biggest, but one of the greatest, was we invested in our own microscope ourselves when we were dealing with our monkeys. She'll do the same thing, so that we get first account before we get to the vet and show them what we found, and have them help us turn around the medical part. What's the best avenue to take? But the investment of that microscope is one of the best things ever.
Yes. I probably do more work and it'll probably save more lives with my microscope than anything else. So having a good microscope, knowing how to use it is really important. All right, next question. Man, I find it hard to believe. You guys have been like torturing me for the last 24 hours.
How's the lab?
You've already
Are
answered
they
the
doing the same
question,
techniques
so.
that you're doing versus what?
Mostly, yes. And think of it, you know, back to the limitations of a culture going to a lab. There's a temperature inside the UPS truck. You know, those things aren't air conditioned. Bouncing it around, these organisms, most organisms have a finite lifespan. So, you know, some bacteria only live 8 to 10 hours and then they kind of die off. So if you're sending that sample, a fecal sample off, they're not going to be able to get you the answer you're looking for. You know, they may miss it. They're looking, they're honestly trying to give you an answer, but if it's not moving or growing under their conditions, then they're going to have to tell you, sorry, it didn't work. Nothing's there. I can't tell you how many times I've called the lab and said, look, I can send you samples of what I saw under the microscope. I've got pictures. So you need to be growing at least one of these 3 things to let me know what's going on. And it's like, sorry, doc, can't go back and redo it. They're dead. It's done. It's over with. Thank you for the $200. See you next time. Anybody else? You again. Always the trouble guy in the back.
I'm the only one to learn. In the past, I renewed back in the situation we had with Kara passing. What I'm finding out my dog, or what was it called again?
My dog, yeah.
My dog. The beneficial I get out of it, because I've always been about numbers, is you and them are making this big data sheet so that in the future, when you come across it, it's quicker for you to diagnose the problem than have to go through a lot of tests by just seeing what's going on. Which would make it better for you as a vet to actually, instead of 2 weeks of treatment, not to have an answer for your primates, to be like 3 or 4 days, say, hey, we found this, this is the best course of action.
The fact that they're giving you those stats in there, okay, that to me is probably one of the cooler parts of this is, you know, you're looking at the number of organisms. For example, that kind of little, you know, monkey over there, when you look at her sample, the aspergillus in that sample was extremely low percentage-wise compared to the bacteria and even compared to the other fungi. But when you go back and look at the slides and you're looking at the things that you knew were there, when she was at her worst, once we had that species, that one tiny little bit of DNA that was there from that one species of fungi, we were able to then map out her treatment a lot longer and a whole lot better. Again, and the stats wouldn't show that that particular species was high on her growth rate, but she'd just been treated with some antifungals. Again, it was that tiny bit of DNA that they were able to map that and say, this is the species that is in there, which I think is cool. You got one of these tables, you'll clean it, you'll kill the organisms that are on it, may even sterilize it, but you can still take that My Dog and sample it, and as long as one of those organisms is intact and even dead, they can still identify it for you. Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't have
that
to be
Now, would you
live.
do that?
does not have to be live.
I got you.
To anybody's monkey that
Yes.
came in? You would do it to anybody's?
Yeah. I don't see why not. I mean, the way they're mapping out the stuff that's on there, we can say, well, your dog has athlete's foot. Please stop taking showers with your dog.
Clean your shower. Clean that shower.
So, with using this test, we can rule out and do a lot more preventative medicine. We don't think of that as a preventative medicine course, but in the case of Desi, we now know that whenever she's having these issues, we will start her on an antifungal, and she will have a lot less gastritises, a lot less enteritises, and hopefully we can, one day, it won't rear its ugly head again and we get her cured. But I have a hard time betting on that stuff. I know that these drugs are cheap for us. We'll get her going.
How often do you recommend pickles?
Anytime we have a problem or a change in stool, and I'm going to say at least twice a year. Those of you who are that have got the fruit eaters and the vegetable eaters and stuff, I don't think it's as bad, but I have actually seen some marmosets and red-armed tamarins and some of our smaller monkeys actually getting parasites or things that are trying not to kill them, but it's definitely causing an enteritis just from the mealworms and the waxworms and everything else that they're getting.
That's why I don't feed
So-
them.
But you could just prevent those things by giving, deworm on a regular basis.
When is too old for formula?
When they start asking for it by name, it's got to go. That's pretty much how it works in the human industry. I'm going to say the same thing for the primate industry.
Because Haley's being, with her being a baby, she's still on formula. Well, Connor thinks he's got to have it, and now Taylor thinks he's got to have it.
Well, we all think we got to have it. Hell, I'm a man up here. I'm not going to say anything I'm going to behave. I'm not usually good at that part. My point is you like to watch them eat as well, so you're part of that problem.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because you got to keep those monkeys hungry, happy, and a little bit of milk will put a smile on pretty much any man's face.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Bring it on.
About the spider monkeys.
Christy's raising her arm.
Parasites that never been seen before.
Uh-huh.
If they had been in their native environment and they had those parasites, what would likely to happen? They die?
They likely could have died of dehydration. In the case of the strongyle, not knowing what species it was, it could have caused some blood loss. And chronic diarrhea could have caused blood loss.
If they had remained in South America?
You can learn, again, back to the National Geographic article, there are 2 dedicated species for every species on this planet. I have a hard time thinking of this planet as being some kind of, where we're here as common brethren. No, we're fighting to be less eaten by the other creatures that are trying to kill us at one point in time. I think of this as the parasitic planet since then, okay? So those monkeys, mom obviously had lived long enough to have that baby with those parasites on board, likely. Okay, statistically speaking. So chances are they'll work up, some immunity or some way to tolerate those parasites.
As long as they're feeding from mom or in the local environment.
Well, being a baby, they would have to again go through the same thing mom's intestines had to learn. I'm just assuming that baby did not climb off mom, walk down to the pond's edge, and pick up a protozoa on its own. It likely got that from mom. While mom was cleaning herself and cleaning the baby, and the baby running around her body, it could have at some point in time, got too close to the rectum, got the parasite that way. It's hard for me to know, and anything other than that is basically a guess. But mom likely survived to make a baby with those parasites, so it could have tolerated it. Doesn't mean it was going to make it healthier.
With its natural environment.
Yeah. All right, who was over here? No? You got shy? Okay, we'll give you help for that later.
Well, now that you've mentioned you love your microscope, I'm going to be messaging you a lot more because I'm trying to learn more about the fecals and stuff.
On the YouTube channel, there's lots of cases on there where you're actually seeing some of the microscope work, both cytologies as well as live fecals. If I didn't tell you this, guys, I have a YouTube channel. I will never be able to retire being a veterinarian, so I'm hoping you guys will tell all your friends. We'll be able to, make some extra money. Right? As a matter of fact, if everybody tells all their friends, I might be able to pay for the next monkey conference, all right? So I'm trying to help you guys out. Yeah, and I need to show off my pimp glass. Anybody else got some questions?
So you said with your the spider monkeys, a vet had ran a normal fecal float and it didn't show anything. So if my vet basically is just doing, like we've done fecal floats and we actually just had one sent off just because she was juicing one to the lab.
Okay.
And everything always, and so they have not been worms because she says it always comes back clean. Should I be requesting? All animals have at least 3.
Here's the thing. If you're sending off your samples, you're putting them in the mail and sending them off, chances are there's a lot of things that's going to happen to that sample.
They're doing it. Well, we've done it in-house and they have sent them
Okay.
off.
My thing is, if you're going to send it off, the same limitations for culture sensitivity may also go for that particular parasite that you're likely missing. Now, this is going to be the cool part. Back to this My Dog test. They are famous for doing fecal samples. So they can map the whole, biome, both, fungal, virus, soon they'll be reporting on the viruses. Right now they can get them, but I think they're having logistics issues with having to find a way to actually, get them back to you. Okay, I'll ask them more questions later on, but
you were able to pick up things too. I mean, is it common for the you said a wet fecal flu, which I have never even heard of that until today. You were able to see, or other vets doing that, or is that something you chose to do?
No, in my area, other vets are not doing this. Okay. Hands up, to Dr. John, Dr. Danny, he's already using the test. He already believes in it. I thought that since this is kind of new to me, I'd bring it to you guys so you guys can go talk to your vet. Okay. The samples are easy. Again, they're likely good. Your vet's likely going to charge about $200 or more for the test, but knowing what it can map, it is well worth the time and well worth the effort and price. So it's one of those things. They could have done this for you, and since they've already mapped parasites, they've already mapped fungi, they've already mapped protozoa, they could probably give you the answer, better than I could with the microscope. There are times that I'm doing a direct fecal mount, I might not be able to see what's going on in there because I grabbed the wrong piece of poop. Okay, so I can still miss things with a direct microscopy, but I know that I'm going to see things they're not seeing on their flotation systems. Next.
Did you talk about all the weird parasites you're seeing from the spider monkeys?
Yeah, that was the whole first half of the.
I can't hear.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't tell if you were
We will find a way. Each. And
It was on TV and she couldn't hear it because it was.
okay.
That's why.
All of the cases that I showed you on these videos today are actually on the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see the case in total as well as the microscope work. Again, if you go to your vet and they're not having an answer, you can, the spider monkey with the protozoa, the big circular protozoa that was swimming around in there, those things are something I've never seen before. Every vet tech in that building was like, oh my God, let me look at this when it was all over with. I meant to leave the camera on there to get their input, but I got busy doing other stuff. Anyway, the point being is if you could show your vet that particular case and say, did you see this in the stool? And if he goes, no, I did a concentration technique, instead of looking like a fool, he's likely going to go back to the microscope with a fresher set of sample and look again. Okay? So by knowing that these things are out there, and it's the reason I'm bringing this to you guys' attention, you can actually steer where that physical exam is going, where the tests are going. If you wanted to have that high dollar test that would tell you every microbe, I mean, think about it, there's 1 trillion microbes on the average 40-pound dog's body, okay, of them, there's likely going to be 60 to 90 species, okay, including dog. There's going to be fungi, there's going to be bacteria, both in the dog and out of the dog. So how come a culture that I had sent off with that many species and that many organisms will come back no growth for a culture? And I have probably wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars of clients' money because my dog wasn't available, and I thought that culture sensitivity was something I could count on. Next. Back through the vaccines. All right. Whenever they send your average dog and cat vaccine, they manufacture and they formulate these vaccines on a certain size animal. Okay, the average, American has a 40-pound dog in the house, or 40 pounds of dog if you have a whole bunch of chihuahuas, that type of thing. And whenever they give a vaccine, the rabies, your distemper, your hepatitis, leptospirosis, all those vaccines are basically based on that dose for a 40-pound animal. So as a general rule in my practice, or the practices that I work at, if one of my patients is less than 5 pounds or has had vaccine problems in the past, I will give a half a dose. When it comes to my primate guys, I know that these vaccines are not approved for them in any way, shape, or form, including the rabies vaccine. So I try to give them a little bit less. Because basically, statistically speaking, back to the one rabies, positive, primate, non-human primate in the country, if that animal had bit somebody else, it would likely end up losing its head. The laws are not with us in any way, shape, or form. Okay, I recently had a case where a monkey had bit somebody and bit them in the ear. Karma. Anyway, I'm not trying to make fun of her. She's not listening. It turns out that the health department from that state had called me since I had taken care of the monkey on several occasions. I only saw it when it was sick. I never gave it any vaccines. Again, the rabies vaccine's not approved for these guys, but the state still wants you to give it. And while talking to her, she was like, "Well, how do we know this particular animal doesn't have rabies?" And I said, "Ma'am, I cannot give you a 100% guarantee on anything, okay? But I can tell you that statistically speaking, that person's going to be safe." But they still wanted me to euthanize that monkey and have it tested. Somewhere along the line in my brain, thinking way outside the box, I basically was talking on the phone. I said, "So we need to know how safe this human was." And she's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, 30% of humans have herpes virus. And if this girl's got herpes virus, I'm going to have to start treating this monkey for herpes virus, and it's likely to kill it. So I need to know this." I said, "TB, there's more TB being spread, right now from humans onto other humans and animals and monkeys than there is most other diseases." I said, "So we're going to have this girl tested." At that point in time, the health department official changed her tone completely to the point where it's like, "Oh, wait, so I need to find out how to get these things for my patients." And anyway, at that point in time, it was okay to isolate the monkey, and we'll keep it in quarantine, and other headaches after the quarantine part. But the bottom line is, she had never thought that one of these creatures, we could die. The animal could die because of what this lady had. So I changed her mind. The monkey is still alive today and in this room somewhere. We don't know. Go back to the vaccines. I do it as a smaller dose to make sure that it's as safe as possible. They tell us above all else do no harm. Every vaccine is not 100% safe. Every case, every drug we use is not 100% safe. It's basically you just got to know the dangers and then weigh it out. Next question. Nothing. I can go find some tequila now. All right, nothing going on. All right, cool. Thank you guys. I'm sorry. Well, I did manage to go for right about an hour, so I covered my butt.
What'd you say?
I said I did manage to do it for an hour. All right.
We're going to take just a few minutes.
But if everybody wants to take 5, take a pee, go smoke. I know some of y'all got tequila in the car.
No.
If you need that.
You brought some? You do love me.
No, 'cause what you had was ghost pepper or something. But we'll just take it, 5.
Thank you guys. Thank you very
Unless
much.